This is a Fox Podium X shock off my 900 RzR XC. It's a 2015. Anyway, it's leaking. It's been pumping oil out down here. I have rebuilt them once, and the rear ones are leaking, and I'm just a little concerned that the new seal from the rebuild kit inside on the seal head may not be up to snuff. In any case, I'm going to check it. I have an extra seal. I'm going to put it in. So the first thing you got to do obviously is unlock the spring, which I've done, and rotated this to the bottom. Now to unspring the actual spring itself, don't try turning this with your tool. Just rotate the spring by hand, and it will rotate and turn right down there. You can actually spin the spring and it'll rotate that down. If you have trouble, just spray some lube there and on here down at the bottom. Use two hands and you can rotate the spring down. Okay, so I'm going to hold it with my hand. I'm going to rotate, and you'll see. You can see how I'm actually turning the whole spring, and it's turning the plate with it and threading the tension off. So you do that with two hands. It's pretty easy. You can also adjust them on your machine fairly easily like that. Once I get that down, we're going to unspring the rest of the tension. So I have it unsprung as much as the compressors will allow it to go. So now I'm going to use, I have some strut compressors, spring strut compressors. I'm going to put them both on up here and compress it so I can get the spring down to get this piece holding the spring in place. Can I slide it out? So now the compressors are in place. So you can see the spring is now loose. I can now slide this piece out and free, and then slide the spring off the shock. Difficult to do with one hand here, but I'll just pop that out, take the spring off. So I've got the clip out. Now I'm going to just loosen off the compressors and slide the spring off. So the spring is off. So before I start taking anything apart, I'm going to clean it up because we don't want dirt getting inside the shock. So we'll give it a good clean up here. So I've cleaned the shock up. The two places that I really want clean are, there's a spring clip down in this groove on the inside. You can just kind of see it in there. You want all the dirt out of there. So I blasted it with parts cleaner and then used the air gun and blew everything out. The other place is up here. So to service this shock, this top groove right here, actually we're going to tap a screwdriver in there and around the edges and tap it up, and it will lift this cover plate off, which is just a dust cover, and the true seal is underneath that. So before I do that, I'm going to let the pressure out of the shock. These are third-party caps. They're bigger, and I had problems with the original ones leaking with just the needle and the rubber type, so I replaced them. In any case, I'm just going to use a screwdriver and push down the pin and let all the pressure out of this shock. After letting the pressure out, this cap will move down. You have to push down on it hard and it will snap in, thereby exposing the snap ring on the edge. And it takes a little work, but I use this tool, just a little hook and a tiny little screwdriver to get in there and lift it. I use this super tiny screwdriver to get in there with the hook as well and lift the snap ring and get it out. So I'll show you that once I get it out. I can't do this with one hand. There you can see I've got the ring out. This is a tricky process because there is not a lot of room in there. What I do is I use the pick to push the ring in towards the center, and once I get it in a tiny bit, I put this tiny screwdriver, or you need another spacer to prevent it from slipping back in, then get the hook under the end and start lifting one end up, and then you'll be able to get it out. Once I just lift the rest of this ring out, I can lift the cap off. So I've lifted the cap off. You can see the seal. There's a rubber O-ring seal there, which I did replace last time. In any case, down inside is the piston. So I'm going to put this over here, and I put everything, be very careful, put everything in the order you took it off, together with the pieces and parts of what you took off. So now I'm going to remove that piston, and to remove the piston, there's a screw in there, you can see it right in the center, and it's got an O-ring on it which prevents oil from coming through, but you need to have it out when you remove it or fill it. So I'm going to take that out using an Allen key, remove the screw. So there is the screw with the O-ring on it out of the center of the piston. So there's a hole in there, and now I've made a special tool. They sell them, of course, but I made this tool. It's very simple. It's just a round piece of aluminum. I cut the slot so I can reach down, hook onto that piston and lift it out. So if you won't be able to see this until I pull it out, so I'll reach down and pull it out and then show you as I'm lifting it. So there's the piston, and all my tool does is slides onto it, and when I move it now, you can see it hooks into that piece so I can lift it. And it's very easy to do when it's in the thing. I can now lift it. So when it's in the cylinder, it just slides up. That's the piston ring, obviously, that is I'm going to reuse because it's not old. None of those are gone. So now I'm going to take apart the top cap. So I'm going to use a screwdriver and a hammer to tap in this top line, tap vertically up, like so. I'm going to put it in there and just lightly tap around, and it will start to separate and the cap will slide up. So there's the shock with the dust cap on the bottom, the protective cap lifted off, and there shouldn't be oil in there, so it's coming through the seal and finding its way out even through the other seal, and that's my problem. So I'm going to slide the dust cap all the way up, get it out of the way. Now I'm going to absorb all this oil, and there's another snap ring just inside here. This one's a little easier to get out. You can push the seal head down a little bit, and it makes it very easy to pop this metal ring out. The ring is identical to the one that I just took out over here. So there you can see now I have that snap ring out. So we'll move it aside. Now everything will lift out of the shock. The entire shaft with the contents. So there's the entire shaft lifted out with what is on it, and that is the piston ring, which I just took off. So I'm going to put this in the vise, and we're going to use a wrench to take the bolt off the top. I have the nut off the top, so now I'm going to lift pieces of the shock off, and I'm going to keep them all together. So I'm going to use two hands so nothing comes apart, and I'll stack them just over here on the table and show you. So there's the contents of what was on the shock shaft. This is, I believe, is the seal head. This is the piston and valving. There's a whole bunch of very tiny, thin shims and different pieces in there. I've cleaned them and put them all back together in the past. I'm not going to touch them because there's not a lot to them. I just want to keep things in order. So what I want to change right now is the seal inside here. You can see it. I just did the other one. This was it. This was a replacement seal. This was not leaking to the outside before I put the new seals in a year or so ago. And so I'm starting to wonder about the quality of this seal. In any case, it's also a little odd the way it's made. So I'm going to reverse the way it was in and see if perhaps it's designed to be the other way. The original seal in there was two pieces. It was like an O-ring and a seal. This is just a seal which takes its place. So again, I'm a little leery. So there's a lip on the inside here, on the side facing me, and that lip seems to be steepest pointing to this side over here. So I'm going to reverse it. Instead of having this side facing the oil, I'm going to make it that this side is facing the oil with the scraper lip that feels sharpest coming back rather than opposed. So a little tricky, easy to get the seal out again with the pick tool. Tricky to get the seal in, kind of bend it and squeeze it in almost like a kidney bean and pop it into place. It does go. So this is the new seal right here that I'm putting in. So we'll see how that goes. So I have the new seal in. We're going to see how this works. So when I put my finger in it now, the sharp edge feels like it's inside, and I'm assuming that is going to keep the oil in, as opposed to when I did it the other way. The sharp edge was facing the opposite way, but the taper seemed correct, but it's a guessing game for me here. So hopefully this is going to hold it, and we'll see. So now I'm going to put it back together. I make sure the parts are very clean, but what we're going to do is we're going to put the shock body here. I have the paper towels over it to keep dirt from getting in it. I'm going to put it back in the vise, and we're going to fill the shock body up with oil. I'll show you what we do next. So putting the components back on the shock shaft, you have seals in there, and this edge is going to really not do well with your seal if you're trying to slide the seals over here. So when you buy shock rebuild kits, usually this little bullet comes with it, and it's a taper. Makes it easier to get them on and get it over that lap joint. So we're going to be using that, and it came with one of the shock rebuild kits that I purchased. The dust cap came off the bottom. This is what we had to pop off to get started at taking the shock apart. That's the black seal in the middle. So I'm going to replace it with a new one also. There's the dust cap back on with the new seal, and the seal head with the seal back in the opposite direction. So now I take the bullet off the top, and I can bolt the valving back on the top. So I've slid the piston back in. There was about equal oil on both sides, so when I push the piston down in the reservoir, it raises the level on the shock side. So now I'm going to fill the shock side right up with oil and put the shock component back in. So I've slid the whole shock absorber arm with the components in, and I had filled it right to the top with oil. And then when you push the seal head in, you just want to expose that little ring. You can see the groove in there where this snap ring is going to place to hold it. Okay, so I tapped the dust cap back on. I exercised the shock up and down several times to make sure any air would bleed out on this side, and I made sure that I had the screw in the center of the reservoir piston with the O-ring out so that the oil can move back and forth between reservoir and shock when I'm moving it up and down. So now the piston is covered with oil, which is what we want, and I'm going to put my tool in now and grab onto it and lift it up, and I have a mark, and I got these numbers online. You can see that mark right here. I want that mark equal to the top of the reservoir when the shock is fully extended, and that's where the piston is supposed to be. So I'm going to do that right now. So this is the piece of aluminum that I made to lift the piston when it's in the reservoir. And that little line right near the end of the tape is a score mark that I put on there to know when the piston's in the right place when I'm putting back together the shock. So it's actually about 3 15/16 from the top of the piston in the reservoir to the top of the reservoir itself. So that's where it sits. Roughly 3 15/16. I know I looked this up, but can't find that data, but this is what I have. So now it's in the reservoir, and you can see I have the piston sitting to the point where the line is now equal to the top, so the clearance is right where it's supposed to be. Okay, so now I'm going to put the screw back in the piston in the reservoir, snug it up, then I can put the cap back on. So there we have it. The shock is back together. Put the cap back on, snap ring, pressurized it. I've got another video that shows what I set up to pressurize my shocks with. I was using a needle in that video. I bought the actual Schrade valve tool now, but I'm still pressurizing and using argon, which is what I have in the garage for welding and is an inert gas, so it's perfect. Anyway, I'm going to put it back on the machine. Hopefully it doesn't leak.